Welcome to the overview video for Chapter 13, Opera and Vocal Music in the Late 17th Century. Our learning objectives are number 1, to trace development in Italian opera in the late 17th century. Number 2, to describe the cantata and other secular vocal genres in Italy in the late 17th century. Number 3, to trace the origins and development of musical theater in France, England, and Germany during the 17th century, and explain what makes each national tradition distinctive. And number 4, to define and use the most important terms and identify some of the composers and works associated with music from these regions in the 17th century. Italy continued to hold a preeminent position in the composition of operas and chamber cantatas. Both genres relied on recitative and aria, which developed a set of conventions that remained relatively unchanged throughout the century. Audiences paid to see and hear the star singers. Arias were written in a variety of forms, but the dominant form was the da capo aria. Venice remained the leading center of opera, but new opera traditions were emerging in other Italian cities, such as Naples, Florence, and Milan. Alessandro Scarlatti, 1660 to 1725, active in Rome and Naples, is recognized as the leading opera and cantata composer in Italy at this time. Rome was the center for cantata compositions. The short contrasting sections of the mid-century cantata were later replaced by alternating recitatives and arias. Alessandro Scarlatti wrote over 600 cantatas. His recitatives used diminished seventh chords and wide-ranging harmonies for expressive effect. The most common form of aria in Scarlatti's opera and cantatas is the da capo aria, a conventional yet flexible form. The variability of this form is clear when comparing arias from Scarlatti's cantata, Clori Vozos e Bella, and opera La Griselda. The text for a da capo aria is in 2 poetic stanzas, and the overall form is A-B-A. The A section features 2 vocal statements of the first stanza, and each is typically preceded and followed by a ritornello. The B section sets the second stanza once or twice and contrasts from the A section in key and musical material. Then the A section is repeated. Influenced by political and cultural factors, national styles developed in the middle of the late Baroque period. French Baroque music was shaped by the centrality of dance and the role of the arts in an absolute monarchy. Louis XIV, who reigned from 1643 to 1715, used the arts to project an image of supreme power. He established royal academies to oversee endeavors in a variety of fields, including music. Louis XIV was a talented dancer, and he promoted and danced in the court ballet, a distinctive French genre that included solo songs, choruses, and dances. The music is marked by elegance and emotional restraint, characteristics reflecting Louis's political control. Music at the French court involved 150 to 200 musicians and consisted of music for the royal chapel, chamber, and the great stable. The musicians of the great stable played for all events that took place outdoors, and they were the king's best wind and brass players. Several important families of wind players that worked in the great stable contributed to innovations in instrument building, which included the invention of the modern oboe. The French created the first large ensembles of the violin family, the 24 violons du roi, 24 violins of the king, and the petits violons, small violin ensemble. These became the model for the modern orchestra, whose core consists of strings with more than one player on a part. Jean-Baptiste Lully, 1632 to 1687, Louis XIV's favorite musician, wrote music for ballets and created a distinctive kind of French opera. Lully was born in Italy, and although he was a musician, it was his dancing talent that landed him a job at the French court. As Louis XIV's superintendent of music for the king's chamber, Lully was the most influential musician of the 17th century. His greatest fame came from his operas. He was also known for creating a distinctive orchestral sound by imposing uniform bowing and coordinated ornamentation. Italian opera had failed at the French court, and at mid-century the only successful combination of stage and music was Lully's and Molière's comédies ballets. With his librettist Jean-Philippe Quinault, 1635 to 1688, Lully successfully combined drama, music, and ballet in a new French opera, Tragédie en musique, later named Tragédie lyrique. Quinault's propagandistic librettos featured serious, usually mythological plots in 5 acts. Each of Lully's operas began with overture in a format known as a French overture, which has 2 repeated sections. The first slow with dotted rhythms, and the second fast and imitative. A divertissement usually appeared at the center or end of each act and provided opportunities for dances and choruses. 2 types of recitative were employed: recitative simple recitative, which often shift between duple and triple to allow the most natural and expressive declamation of the words, and recitative measured recitative, which had more deliberate motion in the accompaniment. French airs are less elaborate than Italian arias, with tuneful melodies, little text repetition, and no virtuosic display. At mid-century, the French borrowed sacred genres invented in Italy, such as the sacred concerto and oratorio, but wrote in distinctively French styles. Composers in the royal chapel produced 2 types of motets on Latin texts: the petite motet, a sacred concerto for few voices with continuo, and the grand motet, a type of large-scaled concerto. Charpentier introduced the Latin oratorio into France, combining Italian and French styles of recitative and air. English music blended its own native traditions with French and Italian styles. Because England was a limited monarchy, the royal house had less money than the French court to spend on music. In England, native genres of dramatic music were more successful than opera. Masques were court entertainments that shared many aspects of opera, but they were more like long spectacles akin to French court ballets than unified dramas. The first English operas mixed elements of spoken drama with the masque. French opera failed in the 1670s, and only 2 dramas sung throughout met any success in the late 17th century. John Blow, 1649 to 1708, composed Venus and Adonis for the English royal court. Its music combines elements of Italian, French, and English style. Henry Purcell, 1659 to 1695, was England's leading composer. Purcell's entire career was supported by royal patronage. He was a prodigy as a composer and held some of Britain's most notable musical positions, including organist at Westminster Abbey. Purcell is still considered to be one of England's most important composers, best known for his vocal music and his ability to declaim English words properly while conveying their meaning. Purcell's Dido and Aeneas, from 1689, incorporates elements of the English masque and of French and Italian opera. The overture, homophonic choruses, and scene structure follow the French style, and arias, including 3 on ground basses, are decidedly Italian. The use of dance in Dido and Aeneas comes from the masque tradition, and many solos and choruses use the style of the English air. In the recitatives, Purcell fashions melodies that fit the accents, pace, and emotions of the English text. Purcell wrote 5 works in the mixed genre called dramatic opera or semi-opera. The English did not have native tradition of opera or interest in supporting it until the late 19th century. England had a lively native musical culture. English vocal music ranged from large-scale ceremonial works for chorus, soloists, and orchestra 2 songs for home performance, and the catch, a humorous canon. Anthems and services remained the principal genres of Anglican church music. Public concerts were first pioneered in London in the 1670s. Opera in Italian was central to musical life in Germany and Austria, and in the 18th century, several of the most successful composers of Italian opera were German. Hamburg staged the first operas in German. Composers, among whom Reinhard Kaiser, 1674 to 1739, was most prominent, adopted Italian recitative and aria styles, but also used a variety of French and German song styles. German composers also wrote songs and cantatas in Italian and in German. German Catholic composers at the richest churches cultivated both the older contrapuntal style and the newer concerted styles with voices and instruments. Telemann was regarded by his contemporaries as one of the best composers of his era. He was also the most prolific, with over 3,000 vocal and instrumental works in every genre and style of the era spanning his long lifetime. He drew upon various international traditions and adapted them to suit any purpose or audience. Orthodox Lutherans favored all available resources of choral and instrumental music, but Pietists preferred simple music and poetry that expressed the emotion of the individual believer. Chorales continued to be composed, many intended for home devotions. Orthodox Lutheran churches encouraged a sacred concerto, and composers often created concertos in several movements. Dietrich Buxtehude, 1637 to 1707, was one of the best-known Lutheran composers of the late 17th century. Buxtehude was renowned as an organist as well as a composer of organ music and sacred vocal works. He spent the majority of his career as organist at St. Mary's Church in Lübeck, where he played the organ, composed music, and performed public concerts of sacred vocal music called Abendmusiken. These concerts attracted musicians from all over Germany, including the 20-year-old J.S. Bach. For your 25-point quiz, I would know about Italian opera and the cities in which it was popular. I would know about the star singer. I would know about da capo aria and its form. Know about impresario and its role in opera. Know about Giulio Strozzi. Know about cantatas of the late 17th century and the influence of opera on them. Know about da capo form. Know about Louis XIV and the developments of the 17th century of music and ballet. Know about Jean-Baptiste Lully. Know about French opera overture. Know about the recitative measure. Know about recitative simple. Know about Louis XIV's Great Stable. Know about English masques and the difference between them and opera. Know about Purcell and Dido and Aeneas. Know about Oliver Cromwell. Know about Telemann. Know about John Blow and Henry Purcell. Know about anthems. Know about the public concert. Know about the Lutheran tradition and cantatas. Know about Buxtehude. Know about Abendmusiken. And that should do it.